Stop. Okay, I want to welcome Mike McKenzie to this podcast of near death experience. This is going to blow your mind. And I am
Thank you.
I am thrilled and honored to have Mike McKenzie here chatting with me today.
Well, thanks
Okay,
for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
thank you very much. And how did it all start for you? To how did it how did,
Well,
did it
you
start?
know, for it, the I was perfectly healthy. I was probably about 40 years old, a little over 40 years old. My son was getting married, and we traveled to his wedding. The wedding venue was like 5 hours away from our house by car. So we drove down there, and when we got there, I played baseball in the park with my kids because, there's a big park right next to the hotel, and it was kind of fun. And my other kids, they were all into baseball and they were all athletic, so they wanted me to play. So I went out there and hit some wiffle balls with them for a couple hours, and we just had a nice time. But then that night, I started feeling sick. I thought maybe I was getting the flu,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, something's wrong with my stomach. But I thought, gosh, bad timing. I mean, my son's wedding was going to be on Saturday. This was on a Wednesday. Um, Thursday, I started feeling even worse. And then by Friday, we had the rehearsal dinner to go to. And I went to that. And Friday night after the rehearsal dinner, I was miserable. I was running a fever. I was starting to sweat. I knew I was really sick and I knew something was wrong, but I just couldn't figure out what.
Okay.
Um, and my son, the son that was getting married, was in the medical field. He still is. And so we're sitting at a bar after, at the hotel bar having a glass of wine. And he says, well, maybe it's your appendix. And I said, I don't think it's my appendix because, they say when you have appendicitis, you poke on your abdomen and it hurts. And my abdomen felt fine. It was just like more in my stomach, like I was getting the flu. And he goes, well, I don't know what to tell you then, Dad. I mean, whatever it is, you should get checked out though. Because I've been sick for, like I said, since Wednesday.
Wow.
So we go to the wedding and I thought, well, I can't go to a hospital now and get checked out. I mean, whatever it is, it's going to take some time to figure this out. So I didn't want to be a distraction at the wedding. So we go through the wedding. The wedding was beautiful. It was a perfect day. It was on the coast of California at a golf course. I mean, it was just absolutely gorgeous. Perfect weather. We went through the whole reception, the dinner afterwards. And after all that was over, some of the guests started leaving. My son comes to me and he says, "Hey, we're going to go to Heather's house, which is the bride, and her parents live there, and they have this beautiful condo, three-story condo overlooking the Pacific Ocean." And they said, "We're going to take the presents out there. We're going to keep the party going, and open up the presents and have fun." And I said, "Guys, I got to go to the hospital and get checked out." I was so sick. I
Wow.
mean, I was miserable. The Friday night before the wedding, I didn't sleep at all because I was just tossing and turning in bed. And I ended up going to the quick stop in the middle of the night, getting some Tylenol, thinking that would help, but it didn't. So I ended up going to the hospital. They finally get me back into the emergency room. This was probably midnight by then. And the nurse says, so, she's asking me what my symptoms are. And I said, I think I've just got the flu. And she's poking around on my stomach and my abdomen. And she says, does any of that hurt? And I said, no. And she says, well, it sounds like appendicitis to me. Maybe your appendix have ruptured. She said, have you done any physical activity lately? And I said, well, the only physical activity I've done was on Wednesday. I played baseball with my kids. And she looked at me and she says, Wednesday? This is Saturday night. And it's like her expression changed. She said, okay, well, I'm pretty sure this is your appendix, but let me do one more test. She takes out this little mallet, this little rubber mallet, like what they tap your reflexes with on your knee. And
Yeah.
she taps the bottom of my foot. And she says, does that hurt? And I'm like, no, kind of
No
laughing.
way.
But then she tapped the other foot, and I had pain in my abdomen that made me
Oh,
scream.
wow.
And she says, okay, that's your appendix. It probably ruptured. Maybe it happened, if it happened Wednesday when you were playing with your boys, we got to get in there quick. So she calls a surgeon. Um, the surgeon comes in and he's poking around and he says, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's your appendix. He looks at a blood test that they had done and he tells me that, your white blood cell count is really high, which means you've got an infection. He says, if this happened on Wednesday, we got to get in there quick because, you could have a serious problem. But he says, I'll go in through your belly button so you won't have a big scar, so I can just scope around and see what's going on.
Ooh,
So he says, I'll see you back
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So they wheel me down to surgery. They pop open the doors. They help me get over. There's a couple of guys help me move from the bed onto the surgical table. And all of a sudden, I look like to my right, and Jesus is standing next to me.
Oh my God.
It's like
Wow.
he walked into the room,
Wow.
and yeah, he holds out his hand to me, and he
Yeah.
says, I want to answer your prayer.
Wow.
And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, what the heck's going on here? Why is Jesus here? And I kind of looked around the rest of the room, and it's like everything just sort of disappeared. And it was just me and Jesus. Now, it wasn't like he was floating. This was the part that I thought was so weird.
Okay.
It was a physical man standing there wearing a white robe. He
Wow.
had a very dark complexion, which kind of shocked me because I'm a kid that grew up in, Northern California in the United States. So all the pictures that I've seen of Jesus as a kid were blonde haired and blue eyed.
Yeah.
But, he was from the Middle East. So it wasn't who I was expecting,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
but I knew it was Jesus,
Yes.
which was kind of weird too. And I've always said when his eyes looked into my eyes, he looked into my soul.
Oh,
It was like he knew me and he
wow.
knew everything about me and he just exuded love.
No, yeah.
So while I'm trying to figure out should I take his hand or not, obviously, I mean, what am I going to do? Tell Jesus no? I kind of have to take his hand. So I did. As soon as I did, we were standing on a mountain and there's green grass below my feet. And at that moment, my senses were heightened to the point where I could count every single blade of grass touching my feet. It
Wow.
was unbelievable.
Yeah. God.
But everything else around me was white. Like everything in front of me was just bright white, the brightest white I've ever seen. And kind of off to my right a little bit, off in the distance, maybe 100 yards or so, was this round light that was brighter than all the rest of the light. And it was kind of shimmering and it was beautiful. And I'm looking at it and I'm still, with my human mind, I'm trying to piece all this stuff together because nothing's making sense. Like the grass, I can feel the number of blades of grass and Jesus, the physical form, and I'm just trying to figure all this out. And this light that I'm looking at, the round light, starts sending out these like fluorescent tubes. They're like those long white fluorescent tubes that
Yeah.
you put in light bulbs.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but they're shorter. They're about 2 feet long, and they're a little fatter. They're like about this big around, and they're smooth on the end, and they're shimmering like that round basketball-sized light. And they start coming at me like they're going by me this way, and one of them starts coming right at my head. It hits my forehead, and as it goes through my head, it makes this little buzzing sound. It was and it all of a sudden it just warmed me like all the way down to my feet. I was just instantly warmed with this. It was a beautiful feeling. And then when I look back at where these light beams are coming from, it's like somebody took a curtain and was drawing a curtain from my right to my left of the white. And so the white light goes away like this. And now I'm looking at this beautiful scenery. I can see that I'm standing at a very high mountain. Below the grass, it turns into these little flowers. They're beautiful, they almost look like sweet peas, but tiny little flowers. And they're moving back and forth like they're almost like bending in the wind, but there's no wind. Um, and they're all pastel colors. At the bottom of that, there's a city. It's like a valley, and there's a huge city down there, but I can only see the tops of the buildings, like the rooftops, because the white that got pulled, like the curtain, is now settled in the valley like it's a fog.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this city that's got fog, but there's the rooftops are sticking through, And there's a few of them that are like Capitol dome buildings. I'm sure in Europe they have better rooftops than we do.
We probably do.
You know,
Yes,
so
yes,
just
yes.
picture a really cool city. And there
Yeah.
were some that were like really tall, like church steeples.
Okay.
But I found it interesting that there were no crosses at the top. They
Okay.
just came to a point, all of them. There were a lot of gold ones, but all the tall ones seemed like they were all white, like bright white. And then on the other side of that city is another mountain, a pretty steep mountain, and it's covered with these beautiful trees. They look like pine trees, but they have these like lacy needles, like really pretty. I mean, they were all perfectly shaped. And now the light beams that were coming at me and going by me are now going across over the top of the city, and they're going over to where the other trees are. And one of them hits the tip of one of the trees, the tall pine trees. And it's like it had a diamond on the end of it, on the tip. Because when the light beam hit the tip of that diamond,
Yeah.
it burst open into hundreds of tiny little white light beams,
Wow.
like little like it was almost like fireworks, but they're all white, like bright white.
Wow.
And pretty soon, more of these things hit these trees, these tips with the pine with the diamonds on them, and they're just fireworks going off everywhere. I mean, all over the sky, and the sky is this color like it's like the most beautiful sunset I've ever seen, but there's no sun. So they're really super vivid, bright colors, like oranges, reds, but like very, very colorful. And when the light beams were bursting back and forth like that, like the fireworks were going off, I looked back at the circle where they were coming from. And when I did, Jesus says to me, "It's the glory of the Lord." And when he said that, I was just like overcome with emotion. And my knees were so weak, I fell to the ground. I fell to my knees. And at that instant, they shocked me and they brought me back. So at the very instant I hit the ground, boom, they shocked me. Now I wake up and I'm laying in a hospital bed again. Jesus is gone. The whole scene is gone. And I've got this doctor looking over at me with a mask on. And he says, "Do you know your name?" And I answered him, but I answered in my mind. I didn't verbalize.
Right.
And he asked me again. He says, "Do you know your name?" And I thought, oh, I didn't, I got to open my mouth to talk to him, which was kind of strange. But I mean, not strange now because I'm back in my body. And he says, "Do you know your name?" And I said, "Mike." But my mouth was really dry. It was really hard to talk. So it was kind of gravelly. And I said, "Mike." And he says, "Okay, good. Do you know where you are?" And now I had to think back. I was at my son's wedding. And then I thought, oh yeah, I was the hospital. I thought I should be in surgery. And he says, do you know where you are?" And I said the name of the city, which is Ventura. I said, "Ventura." And he looks around and there's other people in the room that I wasn't even aware of. There's like five or six other nurses. And he says, "Okay," he talks to them. He goes, "Okay, he's back.
Yeah.
He's going to be all right. Let's get him up to ICU." So they wheeled me up to ICU. I spent 4 days in ICU. That's where they have one-on-one, a nurse with you at
Okay.
all times. And then I spent another 8 days total in the hospital. I developed some complications. I developed pneumonia. I had an abscess that they couldn't find for a long time. And that was an awful thing where they went in and drained that. So 12 days total in the hospital. I lost 34 pounds while I was in the hospital. I was really sick and it was very close, but
Oh,
happy to
wow.
make it out after 12
Jeez,
days.
that's incredible. I mean, after all of that, like they say, like when you have the near that experience, like something would happen, like something some abilities could happen, or some insight would happen. Would that be true, or would that be just not?
I didn't really develop any special
Yeah.
superpowers or anything like that afterwards. Uh, I was more aware of Well, first of all, I became a follower of Jesus. I mean, I was a Christian. I called myself a
Yeah.
Christian my whole life, but I really didn't practice any faith. I mean, I was a good guy. I lived a good life. But I became a follower of Jesus, and my prayer life got better. And I started seeing his creation in a whole different light because I just felt like I was really under a lot of stress at my job, and I just took a lot of things for granted. But I mean, we live in a sinful, fallen world. We live under a curse, the curse of sin. But there's so much beauty out there, and so I just started trying to slow down and absorb it all. Just take in. I see a sunset, and I'll just stop in my tracks and watch the sun go down.
And I'm so glad that you're okay now with all the complications
Yeah.
that you went through. I mean, my God, it must have been really tough to go through that. And I'm so happy that you're okay and doing okay now. You're fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
yeah. God, whew. And I mean, this is an incredible story. And how long did you think that you were there, or was it just you just went out and then that was it, and then
It seems like when I tell the story, it takes 10 or 15 minutes to tell you
okay,
what I experienced,
yeah,
but it had to be longer than that because
yeah,
it happened before surgery even started. And then
okay,
I'm assuming I was in the recovery room, so it had to be at least 3 hours before,
okay.
I mean,
That's
depending,
yeah,
it had to be at least two and probably around three
that's
before they shocked me and brought me back because I wasn't in the surgical room and surgery was done.
wow,
So, in fact, that doctor, the surgeon, had already gone home.
wow,
So this was another doctor. I'd never seen him before when
wow.
shocked me and brought me back.
That's I mean, that's incredible.
So
That's incredible
yeah,
story that
it's a weird
yeah.
time difference.
Yeah, it is. It's like, when I read the books, I was on near that experience. I was crying my eyes out, going, "Oh my God." But I didn't mean it like in a negative way. I was there because I can feel like sometimes the pain and the struggle that they go through, and then when they see something, there it's clarified, it's clear, it's like some sort of message that comes in, even if it's a little message that comes in, like when you come back, and then if
Yeah.
that's saying it okay.
Yeah, I think that was just I think that was God's way of
Yeah,
saying, "Hey, you're too stressed out. You're missing a lot."
yeah,
And that was one of the things that I thought.
okay,
That hospital was at the top of a mountain overlooking an ocean, and it's a beautiful city. Um, and I remember walking up and down the hall. So, when you're in a hospital, they make you walk all the time. Like
yeah,
getting up and walking, they want you to do that like the next day, which I couldn't do. I was so weak, I couldn't pick my hands up off my chest. But so a couple of days later, they had me walking, and of course, I'm pushing my IV stand. I had four tubes coming out of me from all over the place.
wow,
Uh, but I just remember walking by and seeing the ocean and some of the pictures hanging on the wall of beautiful sunsets and flowers and kind of the things I saw when Jesus showed me heaven. Um, and I thought, man, what am I missing? I'm just too busy. We would go. I had a stressful job. I was in the construction trade. I was in charge of like 35 houses that were getting built and different stages. We had, carpenters there one day, windows going in another day, electricians and plumbers, all that stuff. I had to juggle all that. And then I'd come home and my kids were in baseball and football, so we would come home, throw the gear in the back of the truck and race off to practice and
no,
trying to figure out where we're getting dinner and
yeah,
homework. And, next day it was the same old thing.
yeah, that's it.
So,
It's incredible. It's incredible that you can say all this. It's absolutely fantastic, like that you can tell your story, and it's very uplifting and very emotional at the same time, and it's very like rewarding as well, because it's your story, and like you got
yeah.
something from it. and you saw like Jesus, and you saw the vision of what it can be, and like all the vibrant colors that you saw.
Yeah.
And I certainly, you couldn't see them here, but like you could see them there, really crystal clear, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. I think that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Like, I mean, as you were talking, I could visualize it in my head, like, and I was going, wow, wow, wow. In my head, I was going, wow, this is an incredible
Yeah. We have a
story.
lot to look forward to. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is when 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 I was a kid, my grandfather passed away, and I went to his funeral, and the priest was up on the altar, and he was saying, your grandfather's in a better place now. He's experiencing no more pain. There's no tears. He's in heaven. And I remember asking God, I said, man, God, that sounds like a pretty cool place, this heaven place. I was just a young kid. I was just learning about, what happens when you die. But I remember asking him, could you show me heaven? Can you show me that? And that kind of became a childhood prayer of mine. Like every night I would go to sleep and I go, hey, I want to see heaven.
Wow.
Not knowing what I'm asking for. I didn't know you had to die to go to heaven. And,
Yeah, yeah.
but 40 years later, it took 40 years, and 40 years later, he showed me heaven.
Wow. That's
So, you
incredible.
know,
It's very moving as well, because I mean, it means a lot to you as well to tell your story, because I can tell like it means
yeah.
very much, it's like your story, and it's deep in your soul, like it's it's there, and you can feel it, and it's a very powerful story to tell. And it should be all over the place. It should be all over everywhere. That's what I think it should
Well,
be.
hopefully, like I said, Jesus didn't give me a message, but hopefully
Yeah,
this is, maybe I'm a little mustard seed in somebody's life and they're curious about,
yeah,
Christianity or Jesus, and maybe they don't believe, and I always say, ask him to reveal himself to you because he will. I mean, I've asked God to reveal himself to me, and I've heard God's audible voice 6 times in my life where he has said things, and whatever he has said, it's later it's proven to be, it had to be God.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
got lots of stories about that.
That's
But the one thing that another thing that I haven't mentioned is when when um, when I was a kid too. This was after I started asking God to show me heaven. We used to watch this Charlie Brown Christmas special.
oh
I don't know
yes,
if they have that where you are, but
yeah, they do.
it's a
Yeah,
cute show.
yeah,
And there's that part where Linus comes out on stage and he talks about the glory of the Lord. And
yes,
as a kid, I was probably 10 years old when we used to watch that one. I started asking God, wow, that sounds really neat because I thought the glory of the Lord, what must that look like? I mean, you're talking about God who made everything, heaven, earth, everything, moon and the stars, but what must his glory be like? That's got to be really cool. So I used to ask him, while you're showing me heaven, can you show me the glory too? I want to see the glory of the Lord. I want to see what that looks like. And when Jesus said it's the glory of the Lord, I think that's why it gave me it had that impact on me where I hit my knees because I was just like, wow, he's showing me the
yes.
glory of the Lord. It was
Wow.
really something.
That
And then
that
a couple years later, I'm reading in the Bible where it says heaven's not lit by the sun or the moon because it doesn't need to be. It's lit by the glory of the Lord. And I was like, whoa, I saw it.
that's
I
very
can
cool.
picture it now.
Incredible. I think that's incredible. I mean, that's an
Yeah.
incredibly powerful saying, in the Bible. And it does move people, to a certain degree. Yes, it does. It's amazing story. It's I have no words to say. I don't know what to say
It
to
was it
because
was amazing.
yeah,
It actually took me 3 days before I could tell my wife because I would just cry about it.
yeah,
And usually, I get a little choked up. I'm able to talk about it now, but for the longest time, I would like my church, when I went back to church, they said, "You got to tell me," and they put me up in front of everybody up on the stage and I'm telling them about it and I'm just crying. But it
yeah,
took 3 days to tell my wife because every time she came in to see me the next day and she says, "Hey, how you feeling?" And I go, "Well, not so good, but
yeah.
you're not going to believe what I saw. You're not going to believe what happened." And she says, "What?" And I opened my mouth to tell her, and I cried.
Wow.
And finally, on the third day, I was able to, through the tears, get to the point where I could tell her. The
Wow.
surgeon came in to see me the next day, and he says, "Hey, I'm glad to see you're still here. Heard we had a little incident last night." And I said, and he says, I got to tell you, yours was the worst case I've ever seen. And this is a 70-year-old man.
Wow.
And then after I was like, you got to be kidding me. And he says, no, it was bad. It was really, really ugly in there. And
Wow.
he says, you probably did rupture your appendix on Wednesday. You're lucky. And he says, you're lucky to be here. And he actually said, God's not done with you yet. And he
Wow.
started to walk out. And then he came right back in and he says, I told you it's the worst case I've ever seen, but that's not quite true. Yours is the worst case I've ever seen where the patient lived.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's a surgeon that does this all the time. He's seen
Yeah.
a lot of bad cases, but yeah,
That's incredible. That's incredible
it's
to
really something.
say. Like, I think that's really. I'd be crying. I'd be crying.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah, I
crying.
was pretty emotional in that
Yeah,
hospital the
yeah.
whole time. Yeah.
Wow. I think it's fantastic story. And I mean, I've all like I mean, yeah, I'm so happy that you came on to talk to me. And I mean, sorry about the time difference. Oh my God.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, I was there going, and I was really looking forward to it. And I was quite nervous as well because I mean, I was going, what do I say? What do I do? But I mean, it's okay because it's fine. It's fine. It's all good. And
Yeah.
I think I don't know, I'm just blown away by your your experience and what you went through and how you came out the other side. And I think you came out the other side shining. So
Yeah. I feel it. Well, I never saw anything the same anymore.
yeah, yeah,
I look at the world through a child's eye now. I think I see everything so different.
that's very good. I believe that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great like I'm honored to talk to you about this near death experience because it was a near death experience. In my eyes, it is a near death experience, and it will stay with me for a near death experience because it's just an incredible story for you to share and for you to talk about and for you to talk about it to your church and for you to talk about to your wife and your kids. And I think that's a great gift in itself, you know, because um you went through it and you know it now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant. It's and I loved your story. I really did. I mean, I do love stories,
Thanks.
and I love stories that touch people's lives and or you know, when they touch your soul, it means a lot as well. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
it's amazing. So and where would people want to follow you if they wanted to follow you? Um
I've got all my social media links are up at my website. It's
okay,
mikemckinsey.com.
okay.
Um,
Good.
and I know that name might sound Irish, but it's not.
Is it
My
not?
grandfather, great grandfather, moved from Indiana, which is the middle of the United States, out west,
No.
and he added the MC. So my
Oh, but
heritage is Kinsey. So
Kenzie, but
I
I
mean,
thought
there may be some Irish back in there somewhere, but
I thought it was a really nice name. I thought Mike McKenzie. It's very ringy. It's very nice. It's very nice. I don't know, very nice
thanks.
name. If that makes
Yeah,
any sense. Very nice second name, and it's brilliant. It's anyway. Anyway, I have to thank you very much because the time is running out now,
oh,
and
sure.
I am such honor to talk to you, and it's a great pleasure. And hopefully, I'll talk to you more in the future, and
Sure.
I'd like to stay in contact with you as well. So anyway, thank you very much, Mike. And
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
all right, thank you very much. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very bye. Oh, bye.
Bye-bye.